they're looking at the age of the home, the plumbing, the electrical. They're looking at the roof age, because older homes typically have, more problems.
Hey guys, you are considering buying a short-term rental, and that may be in Texas, it may be in Central Texas, in the Austin area where we are, where I practice, or it could be somewhere else in the United States, or hell, maybe somewhere else in the world, I don't know. You're not quite sure exactly where to start. This is your first venture into short-term rentals. You've heard they're a great investment opportunity, and you just need some help. So that's why this series was created. Guys, my name is Chris Pesek. I'm a real estate broker at Pesek Properties and the Dripping Springs Home Team. And in today's segment of this video, I'm talking with Anne Archambeault, who is an insurance agent with Rollo Insurance. Rollo Insurance is originally from College Station, Texas, but you're based here in the Dripping Springs office.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about short-term rental insurance. It is different from a homeowner's insurance policy. It is different from a landlord's policy. It's different from really any other kind of policy because of the unique challenges with short-term rentals.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. What I'm going to do is just kind of dive in and let you get started on the top level. Tell us a little bit about why short-term rental insurance in itself is important and the way to go as opposed to a landlord's policy.
So short-term rentals is a type of landlord policy. Landlord policy is typically 6 months or greater leases, where a short-term rental would be, somebody's renting it for 3 months or less than 30 days. It's typically listed on Airbnb, VRBO, or some of the other carrier sites as a short-term rental. It is very different than a typical dwelling fire landlord policy because of the risks, because you're having so many people in and outside of your home.
Okay. And from that perspective, people need to be prepared if they're getting into this. It's more expensive.
Yes, it's more expensive because the liability on having, somebody stay for 2 days and then somebody stay for a month, the liability is spread across all those risks. So it's typically a little bit more than just a landlord policy or dwelling fire policy.
Gotcha. And from that price perspective, guys, I'll let you know again, I own with my wife and a couple business partners short-term rental properties in Colorado. We could have gotten a landlord policy the first year for about $1,600 on the first one. We didn't. We ended up getting the short-term policy because people like Ann told me that was a good idea. It cost us about $2,300, so about a third more. And our policy now just jumped up to $3,500. And again, there's some things we're going to talk about why it did that, especially in Colorado, but that's also going to, talk about some of the things maybe here in Texas or other areas where people may have those. What, in terms of coverage, what kind of things does a short-term policy cover versus just a regular long-term landlord policy? What are the things that you don't have to worry about versus if you were landlord policy only, long-term, you would have to worry about?
So the differences are, main thing is that you're writing it, or your agent is writing it as, that it's rented out to less than 3 months, and letting, the carrier know that that is a risk. It offers more liability protection. So some carriers offer $1 million in liability versus, the highest at $500,000. Other carriers cap it at $500,000 for liability. It will offer the same coverages as a homeowner's policy, water backup, your water damage, to protect your home. If it's a home, it could be a condo. It also offers theft of
you mentioned earlier, like paintings or furniture, stuff like that.
Yeah, so
Artwork,
we've had a couple of claims where, someone stayed at a VRBO and they've come back and, their paintings are missing off the walls. So your policy will cover that, as well as damage that they do to the home. So if somebody's at the house, they light a candle, they set a fire, carriers are going to do a investigation anytime you do have a claim. So they'll look and it's written as a short-term rental,
Right.
and so that coverage will be covered for whatever the damage is. Or if somebody trips and falls and sues you, that is covered on a VRBO as well, and the medical payments, if they break their arm, because it's written
That's huge.
correctly.
And again, you've got a lot of different people, a lot of different abilities coming in and out. That's a big thing. So we hadn't talked about this previous, but listening to you explain that, how would that work? Because personally, and again, this is from recommendations of other people, we have umbrella policies for ourselves and our own personal protections and stuff. But how does that umbrella work with that liability on, they're separate policies, but how do they work in the case of being on the same short term?
So umbrellas are typically sold in millions, capped at 5 million. And if you have your rentals under a LLC or a trust, then you want to make sure that that LLC or trust is listed on that policy. And then you can do an umbrella with a specialty carrier that will, as long as that LLC or trust is listed on the landlord policy, short-term rental policy, etc., it's covered. So that million, 2 million, 5 million sits on top of your liability. So if one of your tenants goes after you and sues you, you would actually have, $1,500,000, so $1.5 million for lawyers, etc. Now, the more VRBOs you own or rentals you own, short-term rentals, you want to make sure that your umbrella actually covers those risks and that those addresses are listed as residences on that umbrella policy, because each residence takes on the risk of whether it's $1 million or 5 million. It will cover each location.
No, I've got to go back and check my policies to make sure that that's the case. Guys, and here's the thing, Anne, can you write in all 50 states?
Not in all 50.
Okay.
We will not write in California or New York,
Okay.
Massachusetts, but we do write in a lot of states. We actually have agents, owners across the nation. I'm able to write because we have those agents, and then any state that touches. And then Jason has his license, so we can write with multiple carriers in a lot of states.
Gotcha. And that's not just for short terms, that's for everything. You can write. And the reason I say that, guys, at this point, I don't know how many conversations I've had with you about this, but I'm still learning new stuff. You can tell her depth of knowledge in insurance. So if everybody needs insurance quotes right now, just because she's in Dripping Springs doesn't mean you can't reach out to her and talk even auto and car policy, or auto and house policies, your homestead. Okay, so moving on beyond that. One thing that a lot of people talk about, even when it's your own personal property, your homestead, there's a lot of different riders and things that kind of go along with it. Is that the same with either a short-term or a long-term rental policy? Do you have to have riders that cover certain things?
It depends on the carrier. Some carriers offer, more endorsements. But typically, if you're going to have a long-term or a short-term, there's specific things like you definitely want the theft of your personal property. If you don't have any personal property in there, which it's probably going to be a rental, not a short-term rental,
right?
More than likely do. Make sure that number is correct. A VRBO policy will also give you the loss of use. It's a little different than homeowners.
That's where I was going. You already knew. This here is absolute gold. You have to know this.
So if for example, if somebody leaves the sink on and it floods the house, or it burns the house down, and you're not able to rent that property, there's something on a short-term rental policy called fair rental value. And that's money that you're going to get, for bookings that you have. So if you can't book your house for 8 months, a year, you're going to want that extra income, because that's why you guys are investing in these homes. So that you can rent it out and make money.
Yeah, and again, it's not necessarily just has to be something that your guests would do. That also would count for, and again, we were going there, my property's in Colorado. If there's a forest fire and it burns it down, that loss of use will apply while we rebuild it, correct?
Yes, because you're not able to rent it. So you'll be getting, if you have $75,000 in loss of use and you have bookings, for which I'm sure you do.
Yeah, it's going to take, and again, if there's a forest fire, it may burn 500 houses, and so it's going to take a long time to get rebuilt. Contractors can be backed up and everything else, so that's.
And typically homes right now are taking 8 to 12 months. Colorado, same.
Yep.
We're dealing with inflation and lack of contractors.
Yep. Materials are back, but contractors aren't. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we were going earlier with the additional costs. So you are paying more for those policies, but the coverage that you're getting is so much different and so much more. I mean, again, yeah, if one of our properties was out of service for a year, that's 100,000 plus that we can point to as revenue that's already been done. That's a huge payout if necessary. And again, when you're in a spot, or maybe it's even on the coast, and I was saying Texas coast, hurricanes, stuff like that, Florida coast, anywhere on the Gulf Coast, any coast, that's a really clutch policy that a lot of people probably don't have. I'm going to guess that a lot of short-term owners don't have this stuff.
I think there's a lot of confusion about, yes, I'm renting my house or I'm renting my condo or, a structure on your property, but it's how you rent it. If you have a tenant in there and it's, over 6 months, then it wouldn't qualify for the short-term rental policy. And it wouldn't qualify for some of the coverages. You've got vandalism, you've got the theft, you've got, you definitely want the water damage. You want,
Sewer
different
backup.
Endorsements, because let's be honest, when somebody comes and rents a house, you're not going to take care of it as well as you take care of your own
That's right.
property.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
You just hope they don't wreck it too bad.
Right.
And I haven't had that experience. I'm sure there are people have had that experience. We haven't yet, thank God. So you just touched on something that, and again, I don't know this. What happens if you've got a bed and breakfast or your own house where you're renting out a part of it and you're living in part of it? How does that work?
So if it's under a business, then it needs to be on a commercial policy.
Okay.
But if it is your home and you're renting out a part of your home, say you have, a guest house above the garage, then you're going to want to make sure that you have the home sharing endorsement on your homeowner's policy, because that covers people coming and staying at the house if something does happen to that structure.
That's easy enough. Now let's shift a little bit. We were talking about natural disasters and things. And I'll just relive the conversation that I had with you about our properties. We're in Colorado, high risk of wildfire. And you mentioned the same thing about Dripping Springs, Central Texas, and heading out into West Texas, Fredericksburg area. Talk about how it's more difficult to get those policies and why they're more expensive.
So first thing they do is pretty much, they run the address, the zip code, and they're looking at the wildfire score. Dripping, unfortunately, we're in the hill country. We're a little higher than, downtown Austin.
Yep.
Colorado, we've got all the woods. They're rated at a higher wildfire score as well, just as well as the coast. You've got the hurricanes. They're looking at that. They're looking at prior losses, and they're looking at fires that were in the area. We had the big Dripping Springs fire last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're looking at how far is the fire station? Is there a fire hydrant? And then they give it a PC number, anywhere from 1 and above. So PC10 is high. Some carriers will write PC10s. Other carriers will not touch PC10s. PC10s mean that the fire department is, more than 5 miles away. Maybe there's not a fire hydrant in the neighborhood. It's a new neighborhood. And how quickly can somebody respond to the fire? Some of these neighborhoods, west, more towards Henley, they're putting in water tanks and fire water access, which does help. But they're looking at that as well as the age of the home. The construction, the outside construction, we all know wood homes set on fire a lot more than brick, stucco. And how is the house built? Is there a pool? Does your property or pool have a fence? That has changed. Carriers are becoming very restrictive. If you have a vacation rental and you decide to put a pool in, then make sure you put a fence.
Wow. Okay.
Because the liability on that pool, because there's so many people coming in and out of that home, as well as people being able to come onto anybody's property, and drowning and suing you, the homeowner, then you want to make sure fences are extremely important, especially with VRBOs.
Okay. You also mentioned that some carriers won't insure a PC-10, but you mentioned specifically in Colorado, I think there might be 2 or 3 carriers who will insure those high wildfire risk areas in general.
Yes, so we have, just the standard carriers that, take on a lot of risks, and then if your house doesn't qualify for a standard carrier, then you can go to a specialty carrier. Specialty carriers are going to be more expensive. They still have restrictions, but they have easier guidelines. Now, you're going to pay for those policies because you need to go with a specialty carrier, but because you need insurance,
right,
and you want insurance on your house or short-term rental, you would go with a specialty carrier.
There you go. And I'm assuming it's the same with, again, at the coast, windstorm, things like that.
Yes, we have some carriers that actually will write coastal homes with wind, which is unique because most of those policies exclude that damage because it is so prevalent, and that's in standard market.
Right.
And then if it doesn't qualify, maybe it's not built so high up off the ground. I know that they're moving the new construction.
Yeah, new construction's going up.
Are going up, just because with global warming and everything going on, the coast is coming closer and closer to these homes.
Gotcha. So, anything else off the top of your head that people need to know just about insuring a short-term property? And that got me thinking. So, what if somebody's got? There's a few places out here that might have 10 or 15 cabins on a property. So is that different? Do you insure them all separately? Or how does that work?
I actually have several clients with that. So you would, if it has a bathroom and it has a bedroom, you're going to want to insure it as a structure, as a home on that. So you can do it multiple ways. You can put the address, and then each cabin, say they're cabins, would be, address and then A, address and then B. And then you would put, as the agent, you would put the details of each cabin. If they're the same size, same build, then it would just be, if you had 10 of them, you would have 10 listed. The good thing about that is having these listed is they each have their deductible. So if you lose one cabin, you're not paying for your $2 million policy with, a 1% deductible. You're actually paying, maybe the cabin's $100,000 to rebuild. You're going to be paying 1% of that $100,000 for that cabin.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about? And this is something I asked you last time we talked. Are there things that you can do? Let's say your insurance is high, and they tell you, hey, it's high because you're in a high wildfire area. You've got trees next to the house. You've got your ground's not clear, stuff like that. Is there stuff you can do to your properties to actually get them to lower the premium then kind of moving forward? Are there special building materials, things like that? Because maybe somebody's wanting to build a short-term rental. Like, how do you work with your insurance carriers to kind of minimize that cost?
Roof is very important. If you're doing a new build, great, your roof's going to be new. They're looking at the age of the home, the plumbing, the electrical. They're looking at the roof age, because older homes typically have, more problems than a new build. And then they're looking at construction materials. So I know that some carriers will not insure metal buildings. If you have like a barn dominium, we do have carriers that insure those, and that's it's the standard market. It's not the specialty market. And then metal roofs. There's things, if you put a metal roof, you can exclude cosmetic damage, which is a hailstorm comes and we get little dime-sized hail, and you have a couple of dings. You don't need a full roof replacement. So you can put a roof exclusion for cosmetic damage, which saves you money as well.
Okay. And I think you were mentioning also, like, just in terms of like an asphalt shingle roof, composition shingle roof, there's different grades of that. You know, most people know them as a 3-tab, 20-year, a 30-year dimensional, but you were saying that there's grades of roofs that go up beyond that that are considered structural, even though that they're asphalt shingle.
Yeah, when you talk to your roofer, there's different classes, class 1 through 4. Class 4 is the best, meaning it's hardier, it's going to withstand golf ball size hail.
I think some of them actually will withstand forest fires and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because they're making shingles a little differently
Yeah.
now, which the price to put that on and replace is a lot higher.
Right.
But then a metal roof is also very expensive. So typically, you want your roof to be under 15 years old. Some carriers are now, if it's over 15, they're requesting like a roofer certificate saying it's in good condition.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I told y'all she knew a lot. This is why I'm sitting down with her. Okay, so to wrap it up a little bit, let's say somebody's not going to call you. They've already got their brother or sister is in insurance, and they're going to insure a short-term rental property. What are kind of the top 2, 3, 4 things that they need to have in the conversation about that insurance?
Definitely speak to your agent about the fact that it is a short-term rental, that it is being rented out, less than 3 months. Long-term typically qualifies 6 months or longer. So definitely make sure you let them know that it is being rented out short-term because it's a different type of policy. And then details on the roof age, the construction materials on the outside. Some of these pictures on Zillow,
Yeah.
And other Realtor.com, all these other carriers, you cannot properly see. Also, the number of bathrooms and bedrooms. If there's any updates that you've done, that's really important. Some people forget to mention that they've put in a pool. So that's not on the policy, which means the liability is not extending to that.
Right.
And then if it's listed, where is the home listed? Because carriers are going to want to know, is it on Airbnb? Is it on VRBO? Is it on some of the other carriers or other short-term rental sites? And then, some of the important endorsements, theft of property. You want the water, anything that you can think of that could happen when someone's at the house. And then make sure the liability is, 100,000 is the lowest. That is not enough. 100,000 is not.
Even
not
if you
enough.
have an umbrella policy, you need to have higher liability.
For an umbrella policy, you have to have 300,000 on your home.
There you go.
And that the $1 million, $2 million would sit on top of that. So you'd actually have 1,300,000. If you did 500,000, then you'd have $1.5 million.
There you go. Unless you can think of anything else, that's a ton of information.
I think just, have your agent review your policy, explain the coverages. I work with, clients all day that don't know what any of their coverages mean. And then, if they need the endorsements that are added, have them explain what those endorsements mean, and then make a decision on, okay, well, I've seen policies that are a pier and beam house, and they have foundation coverage on there. Foundation coverage is if a pipe bursts in your foundation and causes damage to the foundation as the water is, exiting out of the foundation. They don't have a foundation. They don't
Right.
need that coverage. They've been paying for that coverage for however many years, and they don't need it.
Gotcha.
So just, your agent should be educated on, what coverages you need and you should know what coverages you're getting. So when it does come time to file a claim, you'll know, hey, that claim's covered. And then also talk to them about your deductibles. A lot of people are trying to increase their deductibles to save money.
Totally the price, yeah.
If you have, make it easy, $100,000 house, not in this area, but you have a $100,000 house and you have a 1% deductible, you're going to be paying $1,000. If you have a 5% deductible, you're paying $5,000. So yes, the higher deductibles are enticing, but when it comes time for a claim, it's
Are
a
you
lot
going
of
to be
money out of
happy to write
pocket.
that check? Because that's, yeah, you've got the first $5,000 of that. That makes sense. And that kind of brings up, you reminded me of something else, and now I forgot it all of a sudden. Oh, it's for actually rebuilding if something does happen. And I ran into this, and you need to understand that, especially in Central Texas and in most everywhere, COVID completely changed the price of construction for everybody. Prior to COVID, I think my policies were written for about $150 to $175 a square foot for reconstruction cost. And we had talked about it, and now I think I'm up to $250 or so, or $225, because that's how much the cost of construction went up. So if you haven't increased your policy amount, let's say you've had insurance in place for a while, if you hadn't increased that rebuild, what is it called? Reconstruction? Replacement cost. That's something you need to talk to your agent about, because if your house burns down and you're insured for $150 a square foot right now, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Your house is not getting rebuilt for $150 a foot. So that's another thing to talk to them about.
And it's important to make sure that your agent is, figuring out the replacement cost accurately, because if it's 85% or less of what it's supposed to be, you're going to get actual cash value, a depreciated cost to rebuild that house. And so you will not be able to rebuild.
Wow.
Some carriers, most carriers now are doing inspections, and they will say, this house, cannot be rebuilt for $325,000. It's, $425,000. And then, every year you should be looking at that and talking and meeting with your agent on any updates you've made. If you've gotten a new HVAC system, if you've put in, new windows, if you've put in a pool, that stuff your agent needs to know, because it could save you money. If you are paying for your roof and you're going to pay out of pocket and not file a claim, let your agent know, because they can change the date of the roof on your policy, which makes your policy cheaper, and it will save you money.
Interesting. Okay, that's a really good thought. All right. Is that it?
I think
You can talk as long as you want here.
I can talk all day about insurance. I love it.
Guys, again, Anne Archambeault, Rollo Insurance here in Dripping Springs. I'm going to have her information down in the comments below. You can reach out to her, again, about any kind of insurance in what it sounds like all but 3 states. And again, that's anything from cars to short-term rentals, boats, business property, everything. You cover everything.
Yep, commercial, life, health, all personal lines, even hard to write personal lines, yachts, $1 million yachts.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
So when I buy my yacht,
When you buy your yacht, I can help you
what about
out.
my rowboat? Will you cover my rowboat?
Your rowboat will be covered under your homeowner's policy.
Okay.
Under personal property if it's
There you
stored at
go.
your house.
There you go. All right, guys, and pay attention to this channel. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe if this is the kind of content that you're looking for and that you're wanting. I'm putting out videos like this on short-term rentals, barn dominium construction, new home construction, and living in Austin and the Dripping Springs area at least 3 times a week. So pay attention to the channel. There's a ton of good information on there. And if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Ann or anybody else that might be listed below, because the short-term series is going to go on for a long time. Ann, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll see you all next time.
Okay, bye.